To discuss the situation in Sudan in detail and also with the Pakistani perspective, we've been joined in the studios by Dr. Tuqral Yamin. He's a senior analyst. Dr. Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. And welcome to our show. After a very, very long time, it's always a pleasure to discuss with you because you have a thorough insight about international and national issues.
Likewise.
Dr. Saab, let's begin with the Sudan. Let's begin with this clash between these two generals that has been continuing since the 15th of this month. Doesn't show any sign of abating. There is a ceasefire, a UN brokered ceasefire that is in place since 2 days. But what do you foresee? Will the ceasefire persist for the next couple of days? Do you feel that there is one side that will overpower the other side? Do you feel also that there is some kind of a chance that a truce might happen between these two sides?
Umar Saab, I think the ceasefire will only hold if there are enough incentives both sides. Currently there aren't incentives for any side because nobody has said, okay, Al-Burhan, you will take over, or Hameti, you will take over. These are the two generals who are fighting.
Is it a clash of egos then?
Yeah, they are a clash of egos, clash of everybody wants power. So they want power and they want indisputed power and they'll continue fighting with each other. It is a US brokered ceasefire.
Yes.
Incidentally, it has been holding so far, but I don't know how long it will hold. They will fight it out. And incidentally, Omar al-Bashir, who was the disposed general, has fallen sick and he's been removed to the hospital. So Sudan has been a military fiefdom for a very, very long time. We know there was Jafar al-Numeri for many years. Then there was Omar al-Bashir for 30 years. Then there was, in between there were civilian rule also, but again Al-Burhan came in, Abdul Fattah Al-Burhan, and then he promised that no, number one, he said, I'll make it a secular country, and secondly, I will bring in democracy. That hasn't happened.
Will that happen? Do you foresee democracy in a country like Sudan?
I doubt it very much. Although there is a political mission, UN political mission in Sudan, which is called the United Nations Integrated Transition Mission. It's a political mission. There is a German, Dr. Volker Perthes is his name, yeah, Perthes, I'm not exactly sure, who is
Volker Perthes.
Perthes, yeah, who was overlooking this entire process. But I
He's the UN envoy to Sudan.
Yeah, the UN envoy, the SRSG. So, but I doubt it very much. When there's no will at the top, you cannot enforce.
You know, Dr. Saab, you talked about, you corrected me and you said it was not the United Nations, but the US brokered truce that has entered its second day. How important is the influence of the US on both the sides?
US has lots at stake. One, if you recall, there was an attack on Al-Shifa medical facility long time ago. And they said that they are manufacturing chemical weapons, and the Americans launched a missile attack. Later it was proved that it was absolutely wrong. They were producing life-saving drugs. So they have always been very suspicious about Sudan. They thought that it's an Islamist country.
All right.
And this has been a colonial, there is the colonial legacy also. You remember Lord Kitchener, who fought the Mahdist forces, and he was credited with defeating them in the famous Battle of Omdurman that was fought, I think, in the turn of this previous century, 1902 or something like that. And Kitchener was very important for our country also because he reorganized the Indian armed forces. So long story short, Sudan is mineral rich, got lots of resources, lots of oil. They've already been able to get away the southern portion of it and make a Christian country of it. Then there is turmoil in Darfur. Pakistani peacekeepers are in Darfur. Pakistani peacekeepers also in Abyei. There is a Pakistani woman, AIG Helena Said Iqbal, who is the top policewoman in Sudan on behalf of the United Nations. So their problems have been created. The peacekeepers don't go unless problems are created.
All right.
And there's always some
is this a very complicated situation as far as your point of view is concerned? And secondly, you did mention chemical weapons and you did mention, you know, this angle. And I'd like to highlight what the WHO also said on Tuesday, that one of the parties had taken control of a national health facility, quote unquote, that stores measles and cholera pathogens for vaccinations. Right. And they said that the lab was completely under the control of one of the fighting parties as a military base, and talks about chemical hazards, bio-risk hazards that are very high due to the functioning generators. So that brings me back to what you just said.
Yes, that these are biological weapons, you see. Malaria,
Measles.
Measles, yeah, measles pathogens and something else also.
Cholera.
Cholera. So these are biological weapons, and it's so easy to produce chemical and biological weapons. Unlike nuclear weapons, these are the poor man's weapons of mass destruction. So they're easy to produce and easy to use also. And although we have the Chemical Weapon Convention and also BCW, also Biological Chemical Weapon Convention, etc., but they're still being produced and they have potential of being used. Iraq has been accused of using it. Syria has been accused of using it. Although Syria's chemical weapons were destroyed, and the CWC was awarded the Nobel Prize also for that. But these are weapons which are dangerous and which can be used, and United States has lots at stake in Sudan.
All right. So, I mean, which means that it can play a proactive role as far as maybe bringing some kind of a truce between the two warring factions is concerned. Because the United Nations also talks about, the United Nations also says that, you know, we are heartbroken, Antonio Guterres says we are heartbroken by the current situation in Sudan. But the fact remains that the situation is there, the situation sees no way of, you know, getting better in the coming days. But are people thinking of the nationals that are in Sudan, of the food security, of the water, lack of water and water resources that are present in Sudan, of all those hospitals that have been destroyed, so medical facilities are not available to them. The situation for the general public, for the layman in Sudan, is also not that, is also quite bleak rather.
Umar Sahab, the Europeans and North Americans are more worried about white people. They will be very, very worried, and they are worried about the Ukrainians being killed. But Africans or Asians are cannon fodder. They are not bothered. Let them, they would rather that they die and a situation is created.
So there's a deliberate hypocrisy as far as or hypocritic diplomacy.
Absolutely, they would like people to die, and then they will send a humanitarian mission over there, and then they will have influence over there. They let the situation on the boil. They let these parties fight amongst themselves, and that's all that they will do. Maximum, they are going to send peacekeepers over there, and peacekeepers also go there only if the P5 permit them to go. Otherwise, they don't go.
All right.
Yeah.
So there needs to be a serious calculation of how this situation is going to move, and how good or bad will the coming days or weeks prove to be. This said, in your point of view, is the Sudan conflict the result of a serious miscalculation, diplomatic, political, or military?
I think the things were on the boil for a very long time, and I think this was deliberately allowed to come to a boil. But more than the United States of America, Egypt should be worried. The OIC should be worried. The African Union should be worried. They aren't playing any proactive role.
And why is that in your point of view?
Apathy. What else can I say?
All right.
They need to because Sudan has borders with Egypt. They are sitting on the Nile.
But it has borders with 7 countries. What happens if this boils over in this neighboring countries?
They have, with Eritrea, they have got. There's so many other countries, because and they are very geostrategically placed. They are also bordering on the Red Sea. So this is a very, very important area. And if the people continue fighting over there, then extra-regional forces will have their say. You see, already there are military bases in Djibouti, which includes, among other countries, China also. So the Arabs should be worried, the Africans should be worried, they should be playing a very...
But you say they're not that worried, their lack of apathy, as you yourself put it. Why?
Political will, that has been the case with them most of the time, in most of the conflicts that have taken place in Africa, you see.
But can the Arab world, can the African world, permit a conflict such as this in the year 2023, when there is so much happening around the world?
They shouldn't. That's what I'm saying. But they let it happen. They are more worried about other things. Perhaps they're more concerned about having peace with Israel than controlling their own backyards.
So I come back to the same point. Is there a serious miscalculation?
Would be a serious miscalculation on the part of the Africans, but not on the part of people who want this conflict to go on. You see, Darfur, south of Sudan. It's not a stable area. The country has been created. It's not a stable country. The president and vice president continue fighting amongst each other. South of Sudan is oil rich. This area has so much minerals that it can be anybody's guess. So they would like the forces that want space to be created for them. They would like this war to continue. And
does that remind you of Iraq? Does that remind you of other such incidents that happened in the
so
past?
Many, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan. See, in Afghanistan, in our backyard, they let a war prolong for 20 years. 20 years.
And what happened at the end? Nothing.
Nothing. The people are still dirt poor, and a regime has come in who are basically misogynist. They would like to go back to the 15th century. They would not like girls to go to schools and colleges and girls to work and things like that. So they don't have any interest of the people at heart. They would like to use these people as battle laps. They would use their weapons and they would sell these weapons, and they will continue this war. So perhaps they would like the Islamists to be finished forever, good or bad. I don't say
it also helps the war machinery, doesn't it?
Sorry, yeah, the military-industrial complex, it benefits most from any conflict. And the military-industrial complex come into play. They say, okay, buy tanks from us, buy artillery guns from us, buy drones from us, buy aircraft from us. So this is a whole vicious cycle.
But in the whole context, there's John Kirby, who's a spokesperson of the White House National Security. He says that the US will continue to remain involved in order to find a resolution to the crisis and will continue to work with regional parties. Is the resolve to find a solution genuine?
They're doing it because they want to remain preeminent in the region. Chinese are already taking over. They had brokered peace between Saudi Arabia and Iran.
That was a huge thing that happened.
Absolutely.
Did the US predict it could happen? I don't think so.
I don't think it came as a surprise for most of us. Then they're saying that we are going to bring peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And now suddenly, United States again find itself in the limelight. Okay, you broker peace over there, we will handle Sudan.
All right.
So they're creating space for themselves.
Well, looking at the past, do you feel they can broker a peace deal between the two warring factions? Or do you feel that we will need the intermediation of countries such as China or other Muslim countries in order to broker peace between these two factions?
Absolutely. We do need other parties who should join in because there's a lot of stake at stake. Even the OIC should play a proactive role now. OIC, Sudan is one of a big Muslim country, not a small, big Muslim country. So OIC should be cognizant of what is happening over there, and people, whether Christians or whether Muslims or whether animists, whoever is dying there, are at the end of the day human beings. So we should be bothered about them, whether they're Africans, Asians or European.
Of course. Now the United Nations Refugee Agency says it is bracing of the evacuation of up to 270,000 people to flee Sudan and go to Chad or to South Sudan. Pakistan has had the evacuation of around 700 of its nationals. That has been confirmed by Bilawal Bhutto Zardari Saab as well. Do you feel that these evacuations will continue? Do you feel that Sudan will be left only with the Sudanese at the end of the day in the next couple of weeks, and it will take a long time for all of those who have been working in Sudan to return to the country? Or do you feel that some good might come out due to the intervention of the friendly countries or countries such as China or the US to broker peace?
No conflict comes to an end immediately. There's no magic wand.
True.
So you see what is happening now. It will take few years to settle down. Okay, and United States has created space for itself. It will play a major role, and very soon after the embassies have closed shop and left, most of them have left, their place will be taken over by INGOs, and they are going to be involved in relief operations, and they will make more space for themselves. It should not happen. It should come to an end. At the end of the day, it's people, common man, who is suffering.
Exactly. I mean, the common man who is in shortage of food, in shortage of water, in shortage of health facilities. It's not all those who are at the helm of affairs as far as these warring factions are concerned. They have all the resources available. It's the common man does not have these resources. But you said, what is the larger game plan in the whole African continent, in your point of view?
Africa as a whole is a resource-cursed continent. They've got immense resources. And Sudan is no exception. So if there is turmoil in Africa, Look at DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo. We sent our first peacekeepers in 1960, and now it's 2023. Pakistani peacekeepers are still
there.
So there is a game plan. They don't want these countries who are sitting on top of so many resources to be peaceful. They would like. Iraq was a similar case. Iraq was full of oil. Perhaps they still have lots of oil. Afghanistan has so many resources. They say it's Saudi Arabia for lithium, which is a rare earth metal. All our mobile telephones, the batteries are made of lithium. So I think it's a larger game plan.
Are the RSF or the Sudanese general being backed by other forces?
It's quite possible. It's quite possible. I believe there are certain very important Arab countries who are backing Houthi. And Israelis are also backing them. Israelis have a very large presence in south of Sudan. So there are parties who are interested, who are back. How do they fight? Somebody gives them money. And
you need to have the resources in order to, stand.
So even if Taliban fight, they get money from somewhere. TTP fights you. We were talking to the other gentleman. They get money from somewhere. They don't have any indigenous
Nothing
resources.
happens without resources,
It's the money that makes the mayor go. So they have backers. There's no doubt about it.
At the end of the day, with the evacuations that are currently happening and what the United Nations Refugee Agency predicts, and of course the Pakistani nationals that are still also, amongst other nationals that are still in Sudan, do you feel that they need to also be evacuated in the coming days, or do you feel a certain percentage of different nationals will continue to remain and continue to work in Sudan?
If you go by empirical evidence, there are still Western nationals in Afghanistan. So the people remain there. They are journalists, they are aid workers, they are other people with other interests, intelligence operators. So people would remain over there. But from Pakistan's point of view, how soon would we be able to reopen our embassy? That's an important thing. Because, for example, in Kuwait, we were able to reopen our embassy, I think in a year or two's time. Somalia, we've not been able to open our embassy. So Sudan is far too important to be left without diplomatic
strategic importance, as you yourself mentioned.
So you cannot leave it without a functional embassy. Even in Afghanistan, you see, although our embassy has been attacked, it has been ransacked, our CDA has been sniped upon, and still we have not closed it. So my main concern is how soon we will pick up the courage to reopen our embassy.
All right. So the next couple of days become very important. The next couple of days also become very important as far as some kind of a truce or extension of this current truce that is US brokered is concerned, is related, whether this will continue, whether sense will prevail, which I don't see prevailing in either of the two factions. But let's hope some kind of intermediary truce comes into force that will remain and that will give rise to some kind of a negotiation or negotiated process between the two parties. Thank you so very much, Dr. Tuqral Yami, senior analyst, to have joined us, to have talked to us about Sudan. It was a pleasure talking to you, Dr. Saab, as it always has been. Thank you so very much, sir.